Okay. Hi, welcome to the last lecture of Introductory Astronomy, Physics 1600 at Michigan Tech. So this will be the end. I don't think we're going to go full time today. So I just want to brazenly pat myself on the back by saying we got through a whole course without a textbook. And I think that's possible because particularly, I was talking with some members of the class before, Wikipedia is particularly strong, I think, in introductory areas, and particularly introductory astronomy. So I believe this might be the future of introductory classes, going through Wikipedia instead of having expensive textbooks, possibly run by different textbook cartels. So this is a free course, no book, all on the web, all on, well, iTunes. So I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're taking it for credit, I hope you learned what you wanted. And if you're not taking it for credit, you learned some cool stuff and had a good time. So today is one of the more controversial and freewheeling, almost as freewheeling as last time, topics. We're going to go with UFOs and pseudoscience, because that's out there on the in the world, probably more pervasive than actual science, and it's sometimes tough to know what's real and what's not real. And my understanding of how pseudoscience works and how science works in comparison. So we will start with this picture right here. And the question is, this is from an astronomy picture of the day, what's going on here? And I'll give you a clue. This is something that initially fooled me. So the line between pseudoscience and science is not always very clear. Sometimes it's quite clear. But sometimes it goes right up to real scientists or people with real data, slight misinterpretations, or it turns out that what is a reasonable interpretation one day turns out to be not the leading interpretation the next, and then continuing to believe the unreasonable interpretation takes it from science into pseudoscience. It can cross the line in that direction. In rare occasions it can cross the line in the other direction, but I'm actually not completely aware of a case of that. So, for the last time this semester, we will be doing, telling you this is Physics 1600, an actual course at Michigan Tech where you can get actual credit during the fall of 2008. And my understanding is parts of this will probably be rebroadcast in some form on the web in spring 2009, if they don't live in infamy, or infamy, I guess is the right word, infamous. So we'll be talking about UFOs and pseudosciences. There will be no next lecture. If there is, please email me, because that'll be strange. Michigan Tech, I'm Robert Nemiroff. I help lead the Astronomy Picture of the Day site, so we'll be doing some really cool pictures of the day today, and we'll be reviewing them at the end of this lecture. So to get credit, go to courses.mtu.edu. Most of the people don't sign up for this. They signed up. Most people don't show for lecture. So I haven't seen most of the people who are taking this class. But you are still responsible for stuff if you're taking this class. The lecture material, Wikipedia articles, not including the higher math. So we will be doing all the astronomy pictures of the day posted during the semester, which we now know will go from 2008 September 1st through 2008 December 10. And if this is being rerun, those are the ones that are being reviewed. So even if it's rerun in the spring of 2009 or even the summer of 2009, most probably you would be responsible for these particular APODs, because those are the ones that are discussed. Homeworks 1 through 12 are the homeworks that are all now due, and the final exam will be released later today. It will be 100 questions, and it will be due next Wednesday, well, by 5 p.m. You can complete it at any time, but the last time you can click the last answer to be done would be next Wednesday at 5. Okay, so I guess most of this stuff isn't typically on the final, so I don't know. Wikipedia is actually pretty good with this. I didn't put in any Wikipedia articles. I don't know today. It was partly an oversight. I don't know. I've occasionally browsed what Wikipedia does say, and it usually comes down well on the side of science and not pseudoscience. So many times, if you think something is pseudoscience, the thing to do is to go to Wikipedia, type it in, and scroll down to see what the critics are saying. And sometimes I've found that something that I thought, oh, so it's not true. So it's a sensationalistic claim. So Still, okay, UFOs. Let's start with one of the most popular things that is somehow attached to astronomy, UFOs. The UFO stands for Unidentified Flying Object. So I'm asked, do I believe in UFOs? And my answer is I believe that there are objects that are unidentified, and there are objects that are flying, and I believe there are objects that are objects. So in that sense, I believe there are UFOs. They're unidentified to whom? Many times to the person who is seeing them, they are unidentified. Yes, that's true. However, many times what is meant by do you believe in UFOs is do you believe that there are flying saucers that are sent by intelligent civilizations that are not our own, that are outside, extraterrestrial, outside this Earth, and there are possibly sentient beings, intelligent beings on these spacecraft that are watching us and are hopeful of contacting us? And my answer to that is no. No, I don't believe that many UFO claims are actually aliens intelligent aliens from another planet. A famous quote from Carl Sagan, one of the great popularizers of science and astronomy, says that extraordinary claims like that require extraordinary evidence. Now, this doesn't mean that there aren't. Why don't these people just go away who claim that UFOs are intelligent flying saucers? And my understanding of that is two reasons. One is because people see stuff in the sky they don't understand. And so it's easier just to take some simple explanation that is not right than to really try to find the explanation that is right. However, in this internet age, it is now easier to go to Wikipedia and look it up. So I'm hopeful that the amount of craziness is going to go down. You can go to Wikipedia many times, will tell you, which you know, and also Snopes. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Snopes.com talks about urban legends and recent urban legends, and is generally very good in telling the stuff that's not right, the pseudoscience from the real science. So when I hear something that sounds too good to be true, I will check one or both these sites and get the instant. So why do these claims persist, let's say, particularly of UFOs? Well, people see the things they don't understand. Also, there are economic reasons why these things exist. Some people have an economic dependence, or have created by luck or by something an economic dependence on UFOs. They sell UFO type stuff. They write UFO books. They sell dolls of aliens and things like that. They realize that they get publicity. They're addicted to the publicity they get when they make a UFO claim. So these are reasons why these things will never really go away. If someone has a business selling UFO pictures or pictures of these green aliens, they're just not going to. If you go up to them and give them the scientific evidence and no, I'm sorry, your claim of UFOs isn't scientifically valid, they're not just going to fold up shop their business and go away and say, yeah, you're right. Maybe some would, some of the more ethically attuned ones, empathetically attuned ones too. But many would say, I don't, look, it's easier for me just not to check into this more deeply. I'm just going to believe the shrill people I hear saying that, yes, it's true, the government's covering up, don't look into, why don't you believe me instead of them? It's easier for me to believe them, and if I do, then my business can continue to thrive and I can feed myself and my family. It is because of economic, I think of them as solitons, economic waves like that. They're not easily dissipated. And they can spring up in any number of ways. There's all kinds of pseudoscience that is economically viable for a small number of people over a short amount of time in particular. And so by offering them that this isn't true does not offer them an economic alternative to how to feed their family tomorrow. So they're not going to go away that easily. It's not an argument of logic. Logic is not going to convince these people. However, anytime they're asked to come up with extraordinary claims, extraordinary evidence to back it up, they just can't. They can make sound bites that sound good, but the detail of science of looking into these never pans out. One famous case I've heard about, I hope itself that is not an urban legend, is I understand the National Enquirer once was given a claim. these UFOs are typically seen by people on fishing trips, or something like that, or something out in, they see something they don't understand, and maybe they think it would be funny to report it and see how far it goes. A lot of these are actual hoaxes by people who think it's funny, and they're just experimenting to see how much this can be reported. So these guys on a fishing trip saw UFOs and took pictures and things like that. And so they approached some news outlets which didn't take it, but the National Enquirer was interested. So the National Enquirer, I think, actually spent some time investigating this and this particular claim. And they, after a lot of evidence, National Enquirer itself, my understanding is, came to the internal conclusion that this was not right. That there's not a credible claim of aliens here. But my understanding is that the National Enquirer made an economic decision not to publish their detailed analysis. And so they published it in their newspaper anyway. And so they had their own economic reasons for doing that. They need to sell. They have to feed their own families. They need to sell their own newspapers. The truth to them is not necessarily important. They're not purveyors of the truth. They're purveyors of things that people want to buy on newsstands. So they will say what they need to say, so long as it's not offensive to the people buying it, easily shown to be incorrect from the people buying it, then they can continue their economic soliton, their economic wave will continue. So that's why it's important to believe, to not just go to any news outlet on claims of pseudoscience, because many news outlets will publicize that even if they don't, even if they can't verify it or have verified it's not true, and will push it anyway. It's important that news outlets that check out their sources, that have experience in these kinds of things, these are the news outlets you need to go to check things out like that. Okay. This is a lenticular cloud. This is a real cloud. It looks like a bizarro spacecraft from an alien culture, but it's not. Many times people will see something that they don't understand. Sometimes a plane going off, blinking in an unusual way, or seen to be blinking in an unusual way, or sometimes a military spacecraft. This is a cloud, sometimes a planet Venus. This is strange looking. So I'm not going to get into the science of what creates this clouds, but the science of what is actually quite interesting. But we'll skip that. This is another lenticular cloud. These are like normal houses. I like the contrast, the normal houses to this bizarro thing. Looks like it could be some kind of spacecraft, but it's not. It's a cloud. It's tiny little water droplets, lots of them. This is a roll cloud. A roll cloud going into the horizon. It's just, it's supernatural looking, but it does not contain anything that nature cannot explain, that scientists cannot explain. It goes off into the horizon. It's this big cloud. These are anti-crepuscular rays photographed over Colorado. So it was rerun recently in 2008, but actually I think this is derived from several years ago. The amazing thing about this display is that when we published this, we then got an email from somebody else who said they saw this. They were in Colorado and they saw the same display. So at that point we realized that there's a lot of people following the astronomy picture today. If two people saw this same sky phenomena, there is nothing supernatural occurring over the horizon here. What's happening is the sun is setting behind the back of the photographer. And so not only that, but there are clouds, or mountains possibly, but clouds through which the rays of light are streaming through. Now, these light rays emanate from the sun, and because the sky appears to be a sphere to us, they will converge on the other side of the sphere. And so they are converging just below the horizon here in the anti-solar point. It's strange, but it makes sense if you think about it. It sometimes takes a lot of thought. But there is nothing supernatural happening there, even though it looks that way. It's another case of somebody would say, oh, this must be beyond. This is a shelf cloud. It looks dangerous. It looks like it could be some kind of tacking super large spacecraft, but it's not. It's small water particles. that are about to rain a lot, I believe, over Saskatchewan. These are some of my favorites. These are mammatus clouds. There's turbulence. Many times clouds themselves, if you look at clouds, they're usually flat at the bottom because the water condensating to opaqueness line is pretty usually clear in the atmosphere where that occurs. However, when there's a lot of turbulence there, then you can get these dipping parts. And not only that, if it's illuminated from the side, then it can look really, really strange. But once again, these are clouds. It's well known what causes this. So why is pseudoscience popular? Well, as I said, it's an economic wave that are steady for some amounts of time. Also, it's popular to be counterculture, I've noticed. So scientists in themselves are generally an unpopular authority figures. People from the general public, in my observation, generally don't like to look to scientists as authority figures. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, scientists aren't elected. They somehow end up at universities by some kind of insular way that people don't care to know. But they're strange, and they've ended up at our universities. They tend to know a bit, so you need the diploma, and they tend to know a lot about specific areas, but the general public did not elect them and is sometimes somewhat distrustful of scientists, particularly at universities. Scientists are self-proclaimed experts. It seems they say they're the authority on this. Why should we believe that? If someone else says they're an authority, why don't we believe them? If someone proclaims themselves, then they're not modest, for one thing. That's not a modest thing to proclaim. So why should we believe someone who's immodest? Also, these supposed experts, they're not generally available. They demand that you pay tuition to their university many times in order to access their knowledge. So these are unavailable, unelected, self-proclaimed experts are annoying, and we don't like them. It's easier to believe people who who are just out in the public, who are available, who are friendly, who are modest, and if they say something, it's just easier to believe them than these jerks who are in academia. This gets into what I call the frame game. Many times scientists will incorrectly try to fight the frame game by citing facts, as if it will convince the person from the general public so the frame is that many times the pseudoscientists will frame themselves as just like the people from the public. I am like you. Those unelected, self-proclaimed, unavailable scientists are not like you and me. So many times scientists, who, in my opinion, actually are scientists, are regular people. Most of them. They have mortgages, they have children. One of the reasons why they're somewhat unavailable is because they're paid to be available to their constituency, which is their university. They're not all mean people. Some of them might be a little, but because they're not picked to be necessarily nice, they're actually picked to be a little bit nice because they have to interact in the classroom, and you have to give a lecture typically to end up at university. But anyway, the pseudoscientists will frequently claim that no, those scientists who are saying these weird things, they're not like you and me, but I am like you. And I have attributes of a nice person. These pseudoscientists will claim I am modest, and I am like you, and here's what I say. And so the people from the general public who aren't schooled say, well, who do you want to believe? Do you want to believe the jerk who's not like me, or do you want to believe the nice person who's like me? And they'll go with the nice person. So that's one of the reasons why pseudoscience reigns, and pseudoscience is more popular than science, in my opinion. It is also, I found, cool to have an us versus them attitude. They, whoever they are wrong. They're wrong. To say that makes someone cool. And people want to take this David versus Goliath attitude. No, they're wrong. The government, they're wrong. Those people who believe in relativity, they're wrong. But we, the member of the public, we're right. Also, some urban legends are just cool, and they're just easier to believe than it used to be to find out whether they're right or wrong. So one is to believe that, say, eggs stand up on their end at equinoxes. That's really cool. It's fun to say. You could tell your friends at the coffee pot or over, over lunch. Did you know that? No. Who can verify it? No, but who wants to actually try to set up an egg? It's difficult. You have to find one. You have to sit there. So it turns out that you can stand an egg on end at the equinox. But it turns out you can stand an egg on end if you practice a lot, anytime. It doesn't have anything to do with the equinoxes. Another pseudoscience is that the toilet always swirls in the northern hemisphere in one direction and the southern hemisphere in the other direction. So the answer to that is that the Coriolis force is a really, really, really small force compared to the toilet water. It's ejected usually in a direction. And it depends on the make of your toilet and which way they elected to eject the water. Most people don't figure out which way the Coriolis force would tell it to go anyway. The Coriolis force is slightly there, but it's really minuscule compared to all the other forces involved, including which direction the water was ejected. So anyway, this is the another place to go, particularly in things involving astronomy, is to, used to be badastronomy.com, but he sold out to the man. He now works for, I think, Discover magazine. But you can still go to badastronomy.com. You just search for bad astronomy, actually, on Google. And he will debunk many of these myths in great detail. He's a person who's a big skeptic. A skeptic is says more what most scientists are and what many people can be. If you hear something extraordinary, be skeptical that it's true until you check it out. That's what skeptics are. And I believe skeptics are a better way to be than people who just believe pseudoscience because it sounds cool or because nice people who seem to be friendly are telling them that. So here, Phil Plait is balancing 3 eggs on end, and here's a whole bunch of eggs. This was done several years ago. If you read his website, you later find out that his wife later balanced 5 more, and so in my count, she's winning 5-3. All right. So other examples of pseudoscience. Astrology. Oh, it's classic pseudoscience. So astrologers tend to, hard to describe that one. Again, it's an economic wave. They're not going to go away. Famous, usually reputable newspaper or news organizations like the Washington Post still report horoscopes because it's economically viable. They're economically afraid to stop them. So astrology has been tested. The claims of astrology have been tested several times. And they're no more likely to be true than someone who does not claim to be an astrologer who's making this stuff up. So some astrologers, I believe, know they're just making it up. Some astrologers really believe that what they're doing is correct. Astrology is made to sound like it could be true because it's got all these planet names and which is where, So it turns out the zodiac, as used by professional, supposedly, amazingly, professional astrologers, that there is such a thing as a professional astrology, it's out of date because sun has moved since astrology became. The biggest attribute of astrology, positive thing I could ever have heard about astrology, is that Isaac Newton, when he was young, saw some drawings meant for it to be astrology, and that helped him become interested in geometry and science. And Isaac Newton was quite the scientist, although a big jerk. He would have been one of the ones that people don't want to believe. Look, this guy, he's a jerk. He might, these equations of his, he says he's right. I don't know. He's a jerk. I don't want to believe him. But turns out, as jerky as he might have been, he was right a lot. So you just have to sort of like put the person aside and listen to what it was he was saying, because he understood calculus and gravity and optics better than anyone else on the planet. He was able to describe the solar system and how it worked. So if you took the nuggets of truth of what he said and ignored the person, you'd be better off. So ufology moon landing hoax. Ooh, that's a tough one. Badastronomy.com really does a good job of explaining the moon landing hoax. Again, it's part of this they thing. Those government people, they're fooling us. I saw the movie Capricorn 1 and I actually liked it. It was kind of fun to watch. And I kind of agreed at the end when O.J. Simpson came running out and was part of the hero of the movie. But anyway, It sounds good. It's us versus them. It's that evil government. It's just not true. Humans landed on the moon. It was one of the greatest things of the human race. You know, humans haven't done almost anything as spectacular since. It's amazing what the Apollo program did, putting humans on the moon. They walked around, they picked up rocks, they did science. They did it on a national prestige budget, but they did it. It's absolutely amazing. We should be so proud of that as the human race. But people are making money. They're making money, so they're not going to stop. You know, as long as people are willing to just buy this stuff, and then, well, I'll get to the, okay, that's the future. I'll get to why one of the ways the moon landing hoax goes on. Okay, another one, though, let's custom is creationism, sometimes called intelligent design. Okay, so another of the great scientists not covered in this class is Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin was a really nice guy. You would want to have this guy over for dinner. He was friendly. He was modest. He was crediting other people all the time. He went out, he did a tremendous number of observations of the world, particularly when I think it was the British Navy took him on a trip. It was great. He was like the science officer on the Starship Enterprise. He was like the nature officer on the ship, the Beagle. And he would go out and he would look at stuff. And it was so cool they did that. And he came back with looking at all these species he saw, and he came out with, you know what, I think that that there's something called evolution, and that species change. And the more adaptable ones adapt. And so if you have several types of one species, and the conditions are right for one type of them to excel, then that type will excel, and the other type will die out. And then as conditions change or as mutations occur, the more adaptable ones, the more fit ones will continue to survive. It makes sense. We can see it on the short term in the laboratory. It just makes sense. Yet, creationism, intelligent design, particularly some people who have strong religious aspirations claim that creationism, intelligent design is what good religious people will believe. And that is just not true. Here's something for you. There is no major religion on the planet that endorses creationism or intelligent design. They don't exist. If you go high enough in your hierarchy, the Pope will tell you the Pope believes in evolution. Go to the tops of any religion, and they will tell you that this stuff is just not true. It's some kind of, I don't know, it's definitely big. There are some breakaway churches, not some churches that will ignore the doctrine at the top of the church because they know it would be popular. And they will, in their particular church, argue against it because it's sort of, you know, it goes back to the things before. These scientists we can't trust, they believe that. They're not like you and me. Religion says something different from science, which it doesn't, in my opinion. Religion is based on faith. Science is based on evidence. Ultimately, how the first things in the universe came to be, science fuzzes out, doesn't know. Religion helps people cope with what you do when someone you love dies and things like that. Religion is a very social thing. Religion is interesting, particularly, it's a very social thing. People are part of religions, in my opinion, not necessarily for what is said, although a lot of moral things are preached in religion. But because it's a social setting where you can go and you can see friendly people. And they have socials, and they have ways to meet people, and they have places where your family can go, and things like that. Science doesn't have places where your family can go. You know, you can't go to the Church of Science and meet your friends there and have a cookout. So, anyway, that's another thing. So creationism and intelligent design are pseudoscience. That's not science. The face on Mars goes back similar of this list to the moon landing hoax. There is no human face on Mars. Even if there's a movie that says that people arrive there, that's not right. Global warming was one that's actually morphed in the past couple years. My understanding is people used to claim that there was no global warming. But you look at enough pictures of melting glaciers, and everyone now sort of has to admit that the Earth over the past 100 years is warmer on the average. Not day to day, not even season to season, but over the last 100 years it's warming up. And the question is why? And the overwhelming scientific evidence, in my opinion, is carbon dioxide. But the global warming argument has changed over the past several years. Is it there to what's causing it? So how do pseudoscientists operate? Well, they get money, for one thing. They specialize in creating doubt. So if they can create doubt, they legitimize themselves. They can tell you that everything is only a theory. Evolution is only a theory. The Big Bang, it's only a theory. So they will say they have a theory too. Therefore, their theory, let's be fair, they go out and they try to convince you of fairness, appeal to your fairness. My theory is just as good as yours, right? So let's give all theories equal time, right? So this sometimes happens on a talk show. You get a pseudoscientist crank given equal time because it seems fair with a scientist. So let's say someone comes up and claims that there's another one of you running around. Now, they're going to go on Larry King. Would you debate them on Larry King that you're the only one of you and they can debate that there's another one of you? No. Those two opinions are not equally valid. That doesn't work out. Frequently, this problem comes up in debates, too. Who's likely to become president? How many people do you include in a presidential debate? No, not every person who runs for president should be up on stage in a presidential debate. Some have diminishingly small chances of being elected, and they don't belong up there, right? Those who represent major political parties, like Democrats and Republicans, yeah, they belong up there. Not every candidate belongs on the stage. Not every theory deserves to be debated. Just because someone claims something else doesn't mean they deserve the equal space and equal time with established scientific theory, which has taken many decades of continued scientific progress to come up with. Many times also pseudoscientists will out-debate a scientist because they have practiced. They have sound bites. They know what to say. They can create doubt by saying things like, you have only a theory, and my theory is good as yours, and you're trying to undermine religion. You're also not modest. They'll grab the frame. You don't represent the common person. I do. So with those practice sound bites, people listening to them will say, yeah, that sounds reasonable to me. Also, many times, pseudoscientists will keep telling you that the hard data, it's there. The data's there. That backs up my claim, my pseudoscience claim. The data's there. When will it be presented? Later. We'll present that later. Or some people who would go look at it would find this. But when the scientist, if you want to see a scientist bring out all the data, so scientists are not necessarily moral people. They're regular people. They're typically expert in very small slivers of things. They're experts on a small part of evolution. Astronomers are experts on supernovae or something like that, some small part of astronomy. So the data they have, in order to understand the context of the data, it might be more difficult. The data they have is very hard to understand. You have to take, like, maybe sometimes classes in college to understand sometimes why this data is best thought of in this way, or what kind of data is the most interesting. Data isn't always easy to understand. Which data is the most important isn't always, and it takes an expert to understand that, which is sometimes why scientists are these experts. Scientists have spent decades, sometimes of their lives, trying to understand one small point. And a pseudoscientist who comes up there with a sound bite really shouldn't be on the same stage on that point with a scientist who has spent decades understanding the nuances of this particular point. So which scientist is best to represent which point is a very different one, because scientists specialize. But pseudoscientists, though, it's difficult to debate them in a public forum, because you will get practice sound bites where they try to grab the frame. And the scientists will try to appeal to logic without sound bites, thinking that this will, many times with sophisticated data, thinking that this will be convincing, and it's just not. Also, my understanding, some pseudoscientists actually have a political agenda. They know what they're doing, and they have a goal. There's an agenda there. They have usually a power structure that they're trying to bolster. What is a scientific theory? A scientific theory, how can you tell the two? What is the difference between science and pseudoscience? As I said earlier, sometimes a scientific theory can move from one to the other. But a scientific theory makes testable predictions. It is based on reproducible results. So if you have a theory, you can say, here's what I think. And if this is true, then this observation, which no one has done, it will turn out like this. So I suggest people go out and try that. And you can go out and you can try that. And if it comes out not like that, then that theory wasn't right. Pseudoscientists rarely will give you a prediction that you can go out and test that hasn't been done before. Science theory also says, oh, these past things that I said when you go out and you did this, if you get this result with my theory, anybody can go out and do that. Why didn't anybody go out and do that? It's reproducible. Scientists also have a way of reviewing, usually anonymously, their results. So to publish something in a scientific journal, many people don't know this, doesn't mean you just write a letter to the journal and say, here's what I think. No, what happens is you have to have data, usually. You have to have things that make up a scientific, not necessarily theory, but some kind of scientific advance. And then it is sent out to other scientists, and they're not going to tell you which ones. And there's a referee. You can picture them sitting there in pinstripes or something like that. And sometimes there's more than one, as many as 3. And these scientists will then get back to the editor and say, this supposed scientific contribution is good or is not good. And if all 3 agree and the editor agrees, then it gets published. So that's how science progresses, through peer review, through making predictions, and through being proud that what they've done, what is done, can be reproduced by anybody who's not allied with the team. Also, many times, a scientific theory is thought that a too complicated scientific theory generally is not so popular as one that's simple. And so the idea for simplicity is shown by Occam's razor, that simply stated, a scientific theory should be no more complicated than it needs to be. Okay, here's some other pseudoscience, that there were canals on Mars. So this is an image of Mars as it was drawn. I don't know, was it 100 years ago? This is a relatively modern picture of Mars taken by Hubble, although we have spacecraft at Mars, so we can get even more details. You can see that this person was probably deluding themselves. They really thought this was true. They thought there were these things there, these canals. So one type of pseudoscientist really thinks that what they're doing is true. And there was some amount of truth in this. Here's the polar cap, that's right. Here's Hellas Basin, that's right. But the rest of it just wasn't right. So this was at the fuzzy edge of science, trying to push that extra little bit to make the discovery. Sometimes that can push you into pseudoscience. But this was a testable prediction. So when telescopes improved, we were able to look at Mars and, oh, let's look for that vegetation. Let's look for those canals. Oh, no, they're not there. So the theory was what's called falsified. It was found not to be true. But when it was suggested, it could have been true. So this could have been true. This was science for a while, and when this came out, we didn't have to wait for Hubble, it's not true. It goes out of the realm of science. And it's okay to try something like that. Take risks. Okay, so here's the face on Mars. So this was taken from a Viking spacecraft, which was in orbit around Mars many years ago, many decades ago, I think. And people were thinking, wow, look at that. It's a face. So this goes into the realm of the, does it look like a face? Yes. So I think this is like a kilometer or so. This is a big face. So it's not like a Martian that's a human sticking its face up through the sands of Mars. So if you look at enough clouds, you'll find one that looks like a duck. But it doesn't mean that there's a big duck in the sky. So just because if you look at enough rock structures on Mars, something's going to look like something, but it doesn't mean there's really a human face there, or there was a monument. So let's check it. Here's a close-up. Still looks like a face. Here's what happens when you look at it with another spacecraft from another angle. It doesn't look like a face. It's just an unusual hill on Mars that has unusual bumps. It's not that unusual. There's lots of hills on Mars. Here's a bunch of them. This is the one they're talking about. This is the Cydonia region on Mars, which has lots of hills. All right. This is a water spout off the Florida coast in the Florida Keys. These things are dangerous, so I'm going on a bit of an aside. If you were to have a small boat and you flew into a water spout, or if you had a small airplane, you flew into a water spout, life isn't good. It's essentially a tornado where the winds are spinning around very fast. Boats can be easily turned over. Aircraft wandering into that could be destroyed, can be thrown into the water. Many times, water spouts are mostly clear, and you don't see them. So they're dangerous. So sometimes it's dangerous to fly low over the coast of Florida or out into the Atlantic Ocean near there. This seems to match up with the Bermuda Triangle, unfortunately. So sadly, many people were claimed lost in the Bermuda Triangle, even if they had a movie made about them later, how they got into a time warp and came back. Sadly, the most probable thing we think now is that they hit a nearly invisible waterspout, and they were killed. But this was something that, so still though, people sell money with Bermuda Triangle movies and books, that if you go into the triangle, you'll disappear. But there's usually, if you look deep enough, there's a natural explanation many times. And this is this natural explanation. Okay. Modern versions of interesting things that are, here's a picture that was sent to the Astronomy Picture of the Day in 2004. And I didn't know what it was. You don't see it right away. Once I show it to you, you'll start noticing it. Here it is. There's a dark streak there. It ends with some kind of splash or something there on the water. You see it? So the question is, what is that? It's pretty interesting to think about. Is it some kind of dark meteor or dark UFO? And so what I did is we actually published this on APOD and asking people what it was, and we linked it to a forum where people were debating it, and they analyzed this, and we actually found people who were in that place. And so it's not a UFO. It was unknown science for a while to try to figure out what it was. It's easy to get a bright streak. It's harder to get a dark streak, but it's possible. So the answer to this mystery, there's a scientific answer, is that this is a bee. And this bee flew right in front relatively quickly of the camera. And there are wings and everything if you blow this up and increase the contrast. And so this unusual dark streak, which might have been attributed to some strange pseudoscientific origin, is a bee. This one fooled me. A school kid, really great when you come up with the news articles of the school kids, because everyone's been a school kid. And school kid took this picture in England. It seemed to me when I saw it, the first clear photograph of a fireball meteor breaking up in the Earth's atmosphere. And I thought that was great. So I wrote it up, and I put it up. But turns out that's most probably wrong. So later that day, when the email started coming in, we realized, so we upgraded it, we corrected it. So what we think we're seeing here is one of the last flights of the Concorde. And what the Concorde did is, it was at a very specific time of day. So it created quite a smoke stream as it did its fuel burn to shoot over the Atlantic from England. But it's not the explosion of the gas you're seeing. This actually, it's near, this is sunlight that happens to reflect off of this particularly brightly. So what you're seeing is the contrail. Contrails are everywhere in the sky these days. This is the contrail, a particularly dense and impressive contrail of the now airplane that doesn't fly anymore, reflecting sunlight at its end. And this was not a unique photograph. But it, again, is an interesting thing that maybe a UFO created that, exploded in the atmosphere. This shows you that things that are not understood right away can come to be understood or not. It is possible. There's things that are seen every day. We don't know why many things are. We don't know, there are most mysteries remain unresolved. No one knows, why the laundry on the chair of your bedroom smells like root beer. It's a mystery that goes unsolved. No one drank root beer that day, but it's just not interesting enough to look into in great detail. So you could claim that monsters from the depth or aliens from outer space created that, but there's no evidence of that. It's just a mystery that right now will remain unsolved. And so with that, I will conclude the last lecture, but don't go away yet. We're going to review the last astronomy pictures of the day from this semester. We'll go small, we will go big. We will go here, and we will go here. Okay, so this past week, no, a little more than a week ago. Yeah, more than a week ago, there was an unusual conjunction in the sky of Venus, Jupiter, and a crescent moon. But not only that, but I think Venus, which is here, was actually eclipsed by the moon. So here you see a close-up of spectacular Venus coming out from the moon. And this was seen all over the world. And it's just very photogenic. Here's a picture of Venus also very close to the moon, I think just before it went in. And it looks also like a bit of a smiley face. Eye, mouth. So we'll see another one of those, another smile in the sky. This is, I didn't guess this apod would be that popular. This is a photogenic sunset with different colors. And then here is the smile in the sky that we just saw. Venus, Jupiter, and the moon all making a nice little smile that seems surreal. And it's a very beautiful sunset, very popular, 993 digs. Okay, this one was still, so at this point I wasn't, so I do about half the apods. Jerry did this one. I think we had enough of the two. But this is actually an interesting, sometimes we will post art on the astronomy picture of the day, and here is an artist's picture of the Venus coming out from the edge of the moon. So this isn't photographic, this is basically just interpreted. Now it's winter in the northern hemisphere, and when it's winter, there's a lot of ice crystals typically in the air, and many times they will be high up. And if they are hexagonal, then they may create a 22 halo around bright things. It could be around the sun, but the sun is so tremendously bright that it's easier to miss it. The moon is just the right brightness, sort of, so that it's more easy to see. So some nights, if you care to look up when it happens to be clear and it's relatively cold, you might look up and see whether there's a halo around the moon. It's pretty cool to see. It's an astronomical sort of event that can be seen by just about anybody, from just about anywhere where it's cold in the upper atmosphere, or anywhere. Okay, so this is called the Dark Doonad Nebula, and I guess we're doing smiles. This is Smile Month on Astronomy Picture of the Day. Here's one eye, here's another eye, and here's some kind of a smile there. So the sky continues to smile on us. This is actually, though, a molecular cloud, a dark molecular cloud that is absorbing light. So it appears dark. The background stars can't be seen through it because it's opaque. This is a globular cluster, and this is a bright star. It's called the Dark Doonad Nebula because people realize that they look up which globular clusters they can see, and many people with a reasonably large backyard telescope can go out and find globular clusters. It's fun. There are star parties where if you don't have your own telescope, sometimes if you check the local events happening, you will find a star party. And there's almost always a globular cluster visible at a star party, so you can go and see 1 million stars in one fell swoop. But if you look in the southern hemisphere at this particular globular cluster, which I forget its phone number, it's NGC 4372, you notice there's this unusual dark streak below it, particularly on photographs. And so not knowing what to call it, it was called the Doodad Nebula, because a doodad is a thingy or whatchamacallit. It's something you don't know what to call. So it is, however, just an elongated molecular cloud. But the name is kind of cool sounding. Okay, next is something that almost everybody has seen, I think. If the picture will come in, please. Please come in, picture. Wow, that's odd. Let's go back and let's go forth. There we go. So this is the Pleiades star cluster. Visible usually this time of year in northern skies in particular. It's sometimes called the Seven Sisters. There are more than 7 stars in this open cluster. You're seeing the very bright stars. You can see this as a fuzzy patch on different images. So if you actually if you search for Pleiades in APOD's search engine, you can see sky images where you can pick out where the Pleiades is. It's not all that far from Orion. So it's there's a lot of dust here if you see it through a telescope or on a photograph. It's a famous star cluster. And we'll go to today's and the last image astronomy picture of the day. This is the Pac-Man Nebula, because this looks a little bit like a Pac-Man. If you've played the video game, it's popular. There's Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man and different Pac-Mans. But this is a cloud that's cataloged as NGC 281 as its name. It is a star-forming region. There is an open cluster of stars that are still forming, and the wind and light from those stars, I believe, is causing some of these striations in this part that would be the dark part around the mouth of the Pac-Man Nebula. So this spans about 80 light years and is about 10,000 light years away toward the constellation of Cassiopeia. And with that, we're just about at time. I will draw to a close. Again, thanks everybody for tuning in and for coming, and even if you're seeing this at Michigan Tech, thanks for the relatively good comments that I received, and I hope people learned a lot. So, see you another time.